Hello and welcome. So this is another one of my 60 inspirational conversations. And today my guest is the lovely Peter McCammon. I'm saying lovely, but to be honest, I don't really know him. So let's find out if he lives up to, is he the lovely Peter McCammon or not? Has he got some inspiration in there to share? So do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are? And let's get to know each other. Let's see where we go with this.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to be part of one of your inspirational conversations. It's an honor to be able. I always love getting asked. In the past, these would have been things that I would have just said no to and dreaded, and I made myself a promise. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was somewhere around about 2 or 3 years ago that whenever I got asked to do things like this, I would just say yes. So
good job I asked you then.
here I am, and so thank you. A little bit about me. I live in Northern Ireland. I've been.
Your accent is amazing. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's an accent from a place called County Tyrone, which is right in the middle of Northern Ireland, and I've been here for most of my life, apart from a couple of years in Belfast when I was at university, and I spent 1 year in England it was 89, 90. So, but apart from that, I've been here. I'm married. I've been married to Julie for it will be 33 years in October. We've 2 adult kids. Jake is about to turn 30, and Sophie is just turned 28, and they're both in Australia currently. So we're long distance parents, empty nesters, if you like. Although we've got 2 very cute cocker spaniels that keep a bit of life around the house. It would be even more quiet otherwise. I work as a coach. I've been full time as a coach since October 2020. Before that, from 2016 up until then, I was both a coach and a psychotherapist. I trained as a psychotherapist in between 2007 and 2009, and I spent a couple of years at that time just getting a lot of experience in a voluntary capacity, and I eventually, once I got my accreditation through, I started doing some private work and had my own private practice. It was just me working with individuals and couples. I did a lot of work with couples as time passed, and prior to that, I spent 20 years in a retail business, which was a family business. So I worked with my dad, my mum, my 2 brothers, and we ran the business is still in existence. My brothers still run it. I left in 2008 after a burnout experience, which is, I can say more about that, but that's what led me to become a psychotherapist, or what led me down a path that led me to becoming a psychotherapist. So that's a kind of a quick potted history of my last 30 years. In fact, more, 35 years.
Okay, so what would you say in your coaching career, if you've got someone in front of you, like you talked about burnout, you'd had burnout, someone who's struggling with something, what do you think is a key thing that if somebody sees or knows about themselves that can change something for them?
It's a great question. I think there are a number of things, but I think where that starts for me is them beginning to get a sense of, or even be open to the idea that they are enough. Whether somebody is struggling to build a business, or somebody is struggling in a relationship, or somebody is struggling with some sort of difficulty that they have in their life. I think so often when we go into survival mode, we revert to old established patterns or conditioned ways of being that are more about survival than thriving. And I think in those moments, when we're in survival mode, it is literally survival mode. We're just trying to keep our heads above water. And in those moments, I don't think we really see how amazing we are as human beings. We don't see the potential that exists within us. We don't see the possibilities that are available to us. We're just trying to put one foot in front of the other or keep our heads above water. And so for me, where I love to try and start is with people is just to get a sense of how they see themselves. And so very often we see I meet people who see themselves as not good enough. That's a very common theme in people that I meet for the first time, and so when I see that, I'm always curious if they're open to the possibility that they are enough. So that's kind of a direction I go quite often, Deborah.
I love that. I love that. And I can, yeah, I can really concur with that. And even in my own experience, see that a lot of the problems that I encountered were definitely rooted in an idea of not being enough somehow.
Yeah.
And trying to get somebody outside of me to tell me that I was enough.
Yeah.
But not knowing that inside myself. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it effectively, whenever we come to believe that we're not enough and we're looking for that affirmation or validation outside, no matter how much we hear it, we don't believe it anyway because we believe it, and that overrides everything when it comes to that. For me, that believing that we're enough. So yeah, it's a for me it's a great place to start, just to get curious, see if I can help people to get curious around the possibility that their idea that they're not enough or not good enough is has its foundation in thought and nothing else, not in reality.
So what is it, do you think, that, like, very often we can hear that, like you say, and talk to people and say, and people have this idea that they're not enough. So what is it, if you're going in with a client, I'm going to take it as read as you're kind of thinking, I know this person is enough, no matter what it is they're thinking, no matter what's going on, I know that they are enough. So what is it about us as human beings, do you think, how are we enough when we have this idea that we're not? And I know sometimes, you can hear, well, yeah, you're probably right about everybody else, but me, I'm not sure I am actually enough. What is it about us as human beings that you can know that we are enough, and no matter what somebody is going through or thinking?
Well, I mean, I don't think this is anything particularly scientific. It's just my way of seeing this. It's that it's really it's where we come from. It's what we're made of, and I don't mean that in a physical sense. I happen to believe, and I don't mean this in any kind of religious way. There is some kind of force or energy that causes plants to grow and stars to spin in space, and hearts to beat and blood to pump through veins, and there's an energy that keeps that all going, or there is a being that keeps that all going. It just depends on how you want to language that, but I just think we are off that. I think it was Michael Neal, I heard him say once, or I read it in a book, I'm not sure. He said something along the lines of, we're not God, but we're off God. And I love that, because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter who I am speaking to or what their circumstances are. They may not be God, but if we are off God, there is something incredible and amazing built in to us. It's in us, and we are off that. And whenever I believe that, I guess it just shifts what I believe to be possible for anybody. One of the things that I suppose I've done a lot of work on this on myself, and I've done it. My coach is Ankush Jain, and I've been working with Ankush for almost 4 years now. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about over that time is this whole idea of possibility and what's possible for people. And it seems as time has passed, as I have kind of embraced what I've just given voice to, just what I can see to be possible for people. So often I see to be possible, what I see to be possible is just way beyond what they can initially see. And I see that as part of my job as a coach is to help people, I guess you could say, waking up to or become aware of what's possible that they just don't see as possible. And so often, if somebody is viewing themselves through a filter of not good enough, possibility is just so it's limited at that point. They're just trying to get to a ceiling that they believe somehow, if I could only get there, then I'll feel okay, or I'll not feel as critical or judgmental or guilty, and that's all they're looking for. And what I want to, I guess, help them to see is that there is a world way beyond that, a much bigger world that is just loaded with potential and possibility.
Wow. So I'm assuming you mentioned Ankush, you mentioned Michael Neill. So I'm assuming you are principles. A lot of what you do is based in the 3 principles. Is this true? Is this?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 principles has been a really important understanding for me over the last probably almost 5 years now, and so I stumbled on it through Michael Neill. I don't even remember how I stumbled on the principles. I think, but I'm not sure, it was through reading something that Steve Chandler wrote, and he mentioned Michael Neill, and I Googled Michael Neill and came across his podcast, and I think that was how I found my way into the understanding of the 3 principles. And so that is certainly part of my work. I think I did some training a number of years ago. I did a training called Clarity Coach Training with Jamie Smart, and one of the things that I'll never forget from that was he was always talking about the principles. It created 2 possibilities, or two things that he took from the principles were one, who we really are, and I've spoken about that already, and then the other side of it is where our experience comes from, and just this idea that our experience is generated from within, and projected out onto our circumstances, as opposed to the other way around. What I've loved about that is I suppose I just lived for so long at the mercy of my circumstances, and having to, the only way through was to resolve my circumstances or improve my circumstances, which meant I was trying to fix all of the pieces of the jigsaw outside of myself. The idea that and not just an idea, the principles pointed to my experience actually being in response to that, or in response to my circumstances, and that I created my experience of my circumstances. I remember there was, and I don't remember when it was, I remember this light bulb moment, and it was like, oh, that changes the power dynamic. The power is not with the circumstances. The power actually lies within me to create my circumstances in whatever way I want them to. Even today, I can get up. I could get up this morning, or I could get up tomorrow morning and create that in my mind. This is going to be a terrible day, and I will probably have a terrible day, or I can create it as, this is going to be the best day I've had in my life. And our ability to create through how we think about things and how we language things. And I kind of shift maybe away slightly from the principles here, but our experience is generated or experience generated from within, it just changed the power dynamic for me. And I saw that it was possible for me to experience different sets of circumstances in any number of ways, particularly difficult circumstances in a completely new way.
Yeah, when we're in what we perceive as great circumstances, we're not bothered about changing them, really, are we? We don't say,
No, but that's a creation as well. You know, that we've you know, that's the principles in action as well.
Mm. Yeah, but we're not. But yeah, when we are struggling, it's really, it's a game changer, isn't it, to know that we are an integral part of the creation of it.
Yeah.
As we change.
Very much.
Mm. So we actually did meet in person. We have met in person. We met at the Birmingham event very recently, the Birmingham experience, the ultimate experience in Birmingham. How has going in that direction, kind of coming across the being movement and the ultimate coach and that, how has that impacted you and therefore your work and what you do?
When I first encountered the being movement, I didn't, well, being movement, or I should say Steve Hardison, and I've shared this. I didn't have a lot of enthusiasm towards it. My first experience of Steve was watching a YouTube recording of it was called TBOLIT NFL, which is short for the best offensive lineman in the NFL. And it's a story, it's a 2-hour story online about how Steve worked with a guy called Deuce Latouille. And I mean, I talk about it now is very different from how I talked about it. First time I saw it, I thought Steve was, he came across to me as arrogant, and I was pretty disinterested at the time, even though Ankush was very enthusiastic. And not long after that, I was on one of Ankush's immersions, and I met a guy called Sundance Robson, who some of you listening will probably know. And Sundance he's just an amazing man. And this topic of Steve Hardison came up, and I mentioned to him my experience of having watched TBOLIT NFL and not really getting it, or not getting anything much from it. And I remember his response was, he just said, "Oh, I've watched that 50 times, Peter." And I didn't know what to do with that, really. Well, first, the thing I checked was that he had said 50 and not 15. And he had, in fact, said 50 times. And I remember coming away from that conversation thinking, I really gelled with Sundance. And I was like, okay, if Sundance is getting something out of this, I'm missing something. So, I mean, I went back and watched it, and I've watched it a number of times, and each time I watched, I saw something a little bit different. And I first probably encountered Steve Hardison not so much in person. In the same room, I went to an event in London called the Ultimate Experience. Or the ultimate event, Ultimate Experience London event in 2022, and my experience of Steve in that room was somewhat different. And I'd gone at the encouragement of Ankush, and I'd taken a bit of a punt on it, and because he was so enthusiastic and he was enrolling people like crazy in it, and I thought, why? And he encouraged me to, and I ended up bringing 10 clients with me. Oh, wow. Well, 10 people. 2 of them were my brothers. One of them was my son. One of them was his best friend, and then what's that? That's 4, and 6 other clients, 6 people who were clients, and they had almost all flown from Northern Ireland to London to be on the event. And that's where things really started to shift and change, where I saw I started to see Steve as just this incredibly passionate, high energy, but loving individual, and that was where my curiosity really started to rise. And so at that stage, I'd read the book The Ultimate Coach, and I've read it. I think I've read it either 4 or 5 times now. I'm not. Yeah, it's anyway 4 or 5. I've read it multiple times, and each time I read it, I see things in a different way. I see new things, and I think what the Ultimate Coach has opened up, that book, and what Steve has opened up for me it's just this idea that um, anything is possible. And I get moments where I just fully embrace that and fully believe that, and I get moments when I run a mile from it. I'm not. It's not. I'm not trying to present myself in any way as some kind of finished article. But I am very much journeying with that, and I've had an opportunity to meet Steve a couple of times since 2022. I've had the chance to meet him in Phoenix twice now, and just this idea that he shares, or he speaks, that anything I can do, anybody else can do, or anything anybody can do, anybody else can do.
Mm.
I really started to see possibility in that, not just for me, but for my clients. And that's where that's really started to impact my work. So it's been a kind of a long answer to your question, Deborah, but it's just the idea of what's possible is literally, I think it's literally without limits. And what that, for me, where that links back to, I suppose the principles is just this idea that I got from Jamie Smart about who we really are, that we're, or Jamie and Michael, between who we really are, and that being of incredible value and worth and potential. And Michael sharing this idea that we're not God, but we're of God. And for me, that was like, well, if that holds in some way, why would what Steve's saying not be right?
Yeah.
And so I started to, not so much. I'm not going to say just believe that, but embrace the possibility of it, and I guess just explore that in conversations with my own clients, explore it in conversations with Ankush, explore that, and not just explore, but I guess just lean in, and I think through taking action in my own life and taking action in my own practice as a coach as well, starting to see that things that I didn't think could, or would happen, begin to emerge.
Mm. Yeah. I loved what came up for me when I was hearing you answer, and great answer, by the way, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Was what I see in all of these spiritual teachings. The principles are a spiritual teaching, and to me, first and foremost, Steve Hardison comes across to me as a spiritual teacher. Maybe a little bit of an unconventional one of the idea we might have, but I think that's great too, breaking the mold about what that is. But I think he is a great spiritual teacher, and not from a religious perspective from me, but when I hear stories about Jesus, what Jesus was saying was, I'm healing these people, I'm doing these things, I'm doing it so that you can do what I do and more than I do. He was kind of saying, this is to open up. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal and saying I am more than you. I'm saying I am the same as you, and look what I can do. And this is possible, or your version, what it is what you are called to do, what you want to do, your version of this is available to you. And to me, that's what, like you say, in what Sydney Banks said so beautifully, what he really made it clear, hey, you are not your thoughts, and you don't have to listen to thinking. And that had a huge impact on me, because I thought, well, if I'm thinking that must, it felt like I had to do something with it, or it meant something, or it was telling me something or whatever. And to see that I didn't have to, that simply wasn't true, was a game changer. And then to look at all spiritual teachings point to this in various ways and in various different words. It kind of says, yeah, there's more to you than just this human thing. The possibilities are endless. And it is, you know, I guess we're all called in different ways, as in we all have things, different desires, different things that light us up, different things that we enjoy doing. But it is like, hey, if you're lit up by that and enjoy doing that, the possibilities in that are, if you really look at who you are, the possibility, the fact that it's lighting you up says, go with that, follow that. There is absolute possibility there.
I think you're right in the sense that I think that's just the idea of different, spiritual teachings. I think, for me, they point in a very similar direction, and the idea of I think what's probably shifted for me over years, and I mean I grew up in a north, I grew up in Northern Ireland, which is quite a religious country, or certainly we've spent many years arguing over religion and in a very in quite violent ways, and I think what I see now is just that, whoever or whatever God is, or whatever that energy is, or whoever or whatever the universe is that we are part of that. There isn't a separation. I don't see that there's a separation anymore. I think I probably grew up with this idea that somehow we were separated or disconnected from that. And well, I think as when I held that as a belief, that led me to, I guess, work very hard to try to narrow the gap, or be better, or not be as bad, or whatever kind of the language that was in my head at that time. And for me now to see this as separation is just not even possible. That for me is such a beautiful space for me to be in, because I can. It doesn't, people will ask me things like, well, if you think you're okay, well, will you not just stop trying? And that's not been my experience.
I neither.
That's not been the way. And I just don't think, my operating system that has for the last 56 years been to try harder, do better. That I think that's always going to be there, and that's now available for me to utilize. But to utilize that in ways that come from a knowing that I'm connected to the infinite intelligence of the universe is another beautiful phrase I got from Michael Neal. That I'm off that. That just feels like a different space to play in than having to do something to strive and to churn and to graft to somehow be good enough. It's just a completely different way of living my life.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and say, yeah, very the the words that used to run in my head, and that I can still see, it's definitely what comes up for me and not so good a days, is the idea of like the separation played out for me in, this means that there is a right and wrong way, and you have to find the right way. And if you and I had a religious upbringing, and very much the religion, I think, like most religions, very much talk about the idea that religion is the religion that has got it right, and so everybody else therefore has got it wrong. And so and then so there's this idea, for me, that was the separation, and how the separation played out, that if I didn't, I needed to continue to get it right. I'd been lucky enough to be born into the right religion, obviously, the one that had got it right, and then and I had to continue with that and get it right. And I guess because fundamentally that idea was wrong, then it's a crazy way. You're going against the system right from the start, aren't you? Because you have this idea that half the people are, or whatever, there's so many people that are wrong, and you've got to get it right. And you just, the whole time, everything that you're doing is starting from a flawed premise. And when we're starting from a flawed premise, and for me, I think that was the game changer when I came across the principles. Although not everything in my head shifted in one go in that sense, it definitely started to undermine this idea of separation, and there being a right way and a wrong way, and people who were fundamentally wrong. And this kind of, it really started to that started to, it couldn't be maintained. Like if all these lovely things that you're saying, we are of God, and there is a oneness here, there is no separation, if those things were true, then these are the things that I was believing could not be true. And these are the things had definitely caused all sorts of problems and difficulties in my life. And these new things that were coming in, there was a resonance. It was like, oh yeah. Sort of a lot of things off your shoulders with that just made so much sense.
I think for me it was great in having my version of what you've just described. There was great I think freedom that I hadn't felt before. It felt like for probably the best part of 50 years, I had used judgment of myself as a lever, as a means of creating my outcomes in my life, where I would judge myself harshly and use the not good enough, should be better, try harder language to somehow be good enough or be better. And ultimately that was what led me to have a burnout experience about almost 20 years ago now. But what I want to say about that was the foundation of my energy to create my outcomes. It was all based on fear. Behind my judgment was fear that I couldn't or wasn't, or it was, or you couldn't be good enough, or wasn't good enough, or had to feel guilty, or and that was ultimately, that just became very, very draining. And I guess how I've simply come to see it now is that when I can be still and lose those judgments, and and forgive myself or let go of those judgments, whatever language you want to use around that, it's a much more loving premise. And so I see it quite simply as I can live my life through an energy that has its foundation in fear, or I can live my life through an energy that has its foundation in love. And I want to choose love. And I don't all the time, but I know that's how I want, that's the choice that I want to make.
Yeah. And even, like you say, when you don't, the same, it is like, do you want to live from love or fear? Love every time. And then I get fearful sometimes, but it is like, okay, well, I can continue to come back to love. I can continue to come back there.
So it's always an option that's available, and sometimes I catch it, and sometimes it takes me a while.
I kind of think we're probably all in the same boat, however, in some form or another we are. But like you said, you don't see yourself as a finished product. I don't think, I think when we're finished, that's when we're finished here, isn't it? I feel that consciousness is infinite. The possibility of who we can become, what we can create, who we can create ourselves to be, has got to be infinite. And so for me, it's like, we're never going to get to a place where there isn't more to see. And I mean, that really, really excites me, because the difference in my life now to what it was before, I was looking in this direction, before I was understanding and seeing these kinds of things, the difference is huge. And it's almost like just when you think it can't get any better, it does. You see something else, you get that, and yeah, another insight, something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I probably had a stage in my life where in my late 30s, and I probably thought I had at that time had pretty much figured things out, which ironically was shortly before I had my burnout experience. And by virtue of thinking I had it sussed out, I just, I had created such a limited version of what was possible and what was available. And once I was able to shift away from this idea of separation and into connectedness or fear towards love, and as my understanding of that evolved, what my actual my understanding of life, it actually became less and less and less, but the potential of what I saw to be possible just became more and more and more. And so as I started to I suppose dip my toe in the water of letting go and not having to be in control and not having to have it all figured out, um, possibility opened up then. And I still, I still try and control things. I still have a need for information. I still have a need to know how it's all going to work out. Those things are still, they're still there, but they exist in a space now where I see that possibility is way beyond what my finite mind thinks.
Yeah. It's very, very a paradoxical direction to look in, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Because I know, like, it really seems that if we can get a handle on it, if we can control stuff and we can know how it is, that definitely our finite mind, if you know, and we can sort this out, that's the way forward. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
And letting go. And I guess if we have carried that idea, like many of us have for many, many years, it's not an easy idea to to look at it and think, okay, what if the exact opposite is true? What if you just control nothing? What if you can surrender? I mean, it's a brilliant book. Have you read Michael Singer, the Surrender Experiment?
yeah, I have. Yeah,
The idea of, can we just surrender to life? Initially, when you kind of hear that idea, but I guess then the more in looking in this direction, that is what we are asked again and again and again to, okay, are you prepared to let go of that? How about that?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, it is. Um, it, not always easy to do that when the habit of a lifetime has been to kind of use my logic and use my intellect and use my my brain to figure it out, to figure out the way things should be. And ultimately what I know within my mind is such a tiny infinitesimally small proportion of everything that there is to know, and yet I depend on that tiny proportion of all that there is to know, as if it's all there is to know. And when I get stuck in that's when I've got into most trouble.
Mm.
When I've let go of that, yeah, it's somehow, life is different. It's not all on me, and yet I can still play the game that I want to play for all I'm worth. But I know that my life isn't dependent on it.
So what do you think has been the biggest thing that has shifted for you since looking in this direction?
I would say that I mean I could point to a lot of external things, and I could point to, you know, my coaching practice has built up really nicely. I could point to, you know, lots of, you know, exercise, you know, exercise that I'm taking, and with regard to my health and fitness. I could point to um, the quality of the relationships that I have in my life. And ultimately, I am I'm a more peaceful person than I was. I'm just much more content on the inside more of the time. And when I'm more peaceful and content and quiet, it just seems to be that life flows better. When my head is full of problems and challenges, and I am fighting for control and fighting for the right answer, and using all of the energy that I have to figure that all out in my mind, then life is draining. And so when I can stay on the peaceful and content and quieter mind side of that equation, um, life goes better. No matter what's going on. You know, even when life throws curveballs, if I can um, if I can hold on to that, and I don't always, um, life flows differently. So that's what I'd say.
I love that you said, I could tell you all these external things because it was like, okay, so that being more peaceful on the inside has clearly impacted pretty much everything on the outside.
Yes, yeah. There's not as much striving, and there's not as much fear, and there's more love, there's more tolerance, there's more acceptance of me, and by virtue of that, of other people as well. And when I'm like that, my relationship with my wife and my kids is better. My relationship with my clients is better. What I see to be possible for my clients just does that. Um, and how I treat myself, you know, even down to the food that I eat, the way I treat exercise, the amount of sleep that I get, how I the behaviors that flow from me being more accepting of myself and loving towards myself, have transformed so much of how life goes on the outside, and I'm just scratching the surface. It's you know, I've only been kind of playing with this for not very long, so you know, I hope to get many more years to kind of play in this space, and see where this can go.
There was something that that you said, I think you said, it's not all on me. I think that I just think for so much of my life, I thought so much was on me,
Yeah,
and just stepping into the, oh yeah, it's just not on me in that sense, in
yeah,
that way.
yeah. It's a lot of weight to carry. I've had my version of that. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I really do.
It's a complete game changer, isn't it, to wake up to the fact. I mean, the way that, again, it's a really paradoxical one. And I know that something, just an insight that came to me was, oh, I can take responsibility whilst knowing I'm not responsible. Because in that sense, it's sort of like we still show up and do things. And I really see that, you know, around I have three adult children, and I have 3 grandchildren, and another one. I've got a brand new grandson. He was born on the 10th of June.
Wow.
I got 2.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, they're such a gift, and such the metaphors that you can see, the way, like, with the whole pregnancy, birth, the child being born, all of that. Oh my goodness. And even my daughter, who's just had the baby, I've got another one. My other daughter is pregnant, so I'm going to have another brand new one in September.
Oh, wow.
So my daughter, who's just given birth, I'm in Devon, right at the bottom of the UK, and she lives in Scotland, and I've just got back from Scotland visiting her. She had the baby, and just like having that time with her, and watching this tiny new life. And I got there the day that I got there. I noticed that night we went to bed, and I definitely was listening. I didn't sleep very well that night, because I definitely gone into what I call mum listening. I was lying there and kind of thinking, can I hear anything? Can I hear anything? Can I hear the baby? Can I hear my daughter? And it was really fascinating to see there. Oh yeah, I'd moved into taking responsibility while thinking I was actually responsible.
Yeah.
And then coming back to, okay, take responsibility, but no, you're not responsible. The difference in the weight of what you carry from that space. And that was, over the days, that was a lot of the conversations that I had with my daughter about the baby, because, this tiny new life. And it's like, I'm totally responsible for it. And yeah, it's absolutely not about not totally showing up and being present for this baby and taking care of all of its needs, because that's what you do. But you can really see that you can do it, or you can do it.
Yeah.
And they are worlds apart. They are literally. And so, some of the conversations with my daughter is, just relax into knowing this is done, and it is being done through you, not that it is on you to do it.
I think that's beautiful. I love what you've just shared, Deborah. Beautiful. Very powerful. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you. Wow, I have really enjoyed our conversation. If anyone wants to know more about you, get in contact with you, find out some more about you, where would be a good place? I will put the information underneath the video anyway, but just in case, where would be?
Sure. I mean, the easiest place to find me is on Facebook, probably. I mean, I'm just my name's not that common a name, so if you put my name into Facebook, I'm in groups like the Ultimate Coach Facebook group. You can find me in there, or also I'm part of Ankush's Coaching from the Three Principles group as well. But Facebook's as easy a way, and I can give you my. I'm happy to give you my email address and contact number if anybody wanted to contact me directly as well.
I'll make sure that information is below in case anyone wants to get in contact with you.
Brilliant.
Is there any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to share after our conversation today?
I don't know. I mean, the words that are kind of are rattling around in my mind right now are just another paradox, I feel like. But something that Ankush coached me a lot around was the idea of just slowing down. And what's come out of that is that the more slowed down I am, the paradox is the more happens in my life, the more comes through me when I am sped up and responsible for it all. That gets in the way, and so this just seems to be a conversation. This conversation for me has been about. I suppose we've touched on the whole idea of love versus fear, and the way to see that is through slowing down and slowing down in here, and as you've so beautifully shared, being responsible too, without taking all of the responsibility for, is a very powerful, yeah, very powerful. So yeah, slowing down.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. It's been lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
My pleasure. It's been a delight, and thank you. And I think we can safely say that that was a nice inspirational conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.